The greenhouse gases that cause climate change have continued to increase rapidly in the last few decades worldwide. Emissions were at an all-time high in 2019, just before the pandemic hit and reduced emissions temporarily. Now, within that overall global picture, different countries are doing different things. So some of the industrialized countries, because they have mature economies, now either have relatively flat emissions or some are actually reducing them significantly. So for example, the UK has reduced its greenhouse gas emissions by around 45% since 1990. At the same time, some of the rapidly developing middle-income countries, China, India, etc., have been increasing their emissions in that same period because of the need to develop their economies and lift their populations out of poverty. So, for example, China's emissions have now increased by around 250% since the year 2000, and China and the United States are now the two biggest emitters in the world. So what's being done to actually rectify this situation? So there's been a global agreement on climate change to try and tackle climate change for over 25 years. The landmark Paris Agreement, which is part of that process, was reached about 6 years ago. And that basically was one where all countries, 190 odd countries, agreed to keep the global temperature well below 2 degrees. They also agreed to submit plans for national action to try and meet that goal. Those national plans at the moment are not doing enough. So if you add them all up, they take us to a world of somewhere between 2 and 3 degrees, depending on the analysis. So there's a heck of a lot more to do. Shifting to lower carbon vehicle technologies, the way we produce goods and services in industry, and the way we manage the land and produce food. All of those things need to change to lower carbon technologies, to absorb CO2 in some cases, in order to bring emissions down to the level they need to be by mid-century. So I think there are three real conditions for getting more successful in tackle climate change, which we need to see in international agreements and by national action. First is leading countries need to match their long-term pledges with concrete action in the coming months and years to really show how they're going to reduce emissions in individual sectors and give people incentives to do that. Second, more countries need to join them and be more ambitious, particularly China and the United States. And then third, we need to think about equity, both within countries in terms of those people who might lose jobs, who might face high costs. Those people have to be compensated and helped, but also between countries. A lot of help is required for developing countries, particularly low-income countries, to adapt to climate change and to grow their economy in the way that is low carbon in the first place.